Okay.
Okay. Hello. We are here doing our presentation with Miss Connie. What is your teaching philosophy?
Basically, I think the most important thing about teaching is building bonds with the kids so that you can communicate with them and they'll be open to learning from you.
Okay. What types of needs do you mostly help with?
Emotional and behavioral and learning disabilities, where I'm at now.
Gotcha. Do you help students in classrooms or just individually?
Well, both. I have a resource room, so I usually have anywhere between 6 and 14 kids in the room, but sometimes I have them in groups and I go around and work individually with them because a lot of them need individual help.
14 kids.
Yeah, it's a lot of kids for this little tiny room.
Yeah. What is the most challenging thing about teaching special needs?
I would say the most challenging is you're going to have behaviors that are a little bit more uncontrollable than in the regular ed, and you have to kind of pick your battles, and even if like somebody's breaking a rule, sometimes you have to bend the rules to accommodate them.
Mm-hmm. What is the most rewarding thing about teaching special needs?
Every step of progress they make, it's just, and then if they come to you and they've remembered something you taught them last year, or it is rewarding. It's very rewarding. Oh, I just got
And
chills.
it makes me all teary-eyed.
Yeah.
How do you think special needs teaching has changed since when you started to know?
Well, I started teaching first in the mid-90s, and then I took a big gap in time, and then I'm back at it again. And I think the biggest difference is they blend the classes more now than they did then. And back then, the kids were more like separated upon level, so you could like work with a certain group of kids that were all pretty close to the same level. While now it's like you have kids that are maybe on 1st or 2nd grade level, and then kids that are more like on a 5th grade level in a 7th grade classroom, and you're trying to teach to these many different levels at the same time now, which is much more difficult.
What is the most helpful advice you could give me?
Open your heart, be prepared for anything, and love them like they were your own.
I love that. What practices have you been most beneficial for you with working with students with EBD, emotional behavior?
Emotional behavior. I think the best thing, again, is building the bonds, because the ones with emotional, behaviors, every one of them is so different. Every one of them is so individual. They all have different triggers. They all have different needs. And so you really have to look at every one of them, just like the IEP says, it's individualized.
It's very.
Yeah.
How do you organize and manage doing the paperwork for different forms and documents you fill out?
Well, it's funny you ask. No, it's a struggle. That's probably one of the biggest struggles, because I'm in this because I love the kids and I want to teach, not because I love paperwork.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's changed too, though. It's actually a lot easier now because forms are all on the computer, and it's very easy to go in and type in an IEP or something. While back in the day when I first did it, you were handwriting, there was no form. You were, doing the whole thing. So it's easier to be organized now than it was back then.
In your opinion, what is the most challenging thing to teach and why?
Oh, goodness. Do you mean like subject, actual subject?
Anything.
Oh, goodness. That's a tough one, because again, it's a totally individual thing. I think that any subject, if you can make it relatable to their life, it's going to be easier to teach it than if you try to just open a book and be like, you have to learn this just because. That's going to be harder to teach, whether it's math or whether it's English, yeah, whatever it is. You need to make it relatable to them.
I agree with that. What do you think the best way to track progress is?
One thing that I do with the kids I have is I make them write in a journal daily where I'm able to track like their grammar and spelling and things like that. And then we have quizzes more often than tests just to see how they're doing and see what we need to back up on or if we can keep moving ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has helped you persevere through more difficult years of teaching?
Well, having support from your family and your friends is a really big thing. And taking care of yourself, because when I taught when I was younger, I had an undiagnosed thyroid problem, which made me just really tired, exhausted all the time. But as I'm older, I go to the doctor regularly and I take care of myself. And if something feels wrong and I'm feeling off, then I know I need to take care of that, because if I can't take care of me, I can't take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Into that. How do you stay up to date with the newest information about special needs education?
Well, mostly online, and then team meetings where we have, we get together and talk about things pretty often, just our team alone, and then sometimes there's like district-wide, where they, present something to us, PD. And
how do you help children with their physical disabilities? What do you?
I do have one child that sometimes is in an electronic wheelchair and sometimes he's not, just depending on how he needs. But basically I make accommodations in my classroom, like I've rearranged my classroom to suit him so that he can come up to this computer when before I had him, I had all my computers in the back of the room. And I've made a nice big space so that the wheelchair can come in, and then he has a choice of sitting at his own table, or he tends to like to just take his wheelchair up to the other desk so that he can actually sit by his friends. And so that's probably the biggest accommodation I've had to make at this school year.
How is tracking behavior intervention different from academic interventions?
Well, academic, obviously, you can see it more, while behavior, you have to be observant. And your best bet is if you can do like a daily behavior sheet if a student needs that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a student that doesn't need a daily behavior sheet, at least take notes on a weekly basis.
Keep track.
Yeah.
What does collaboration with general education teachers look like for you?
We do that a lot. Since I'm a resource room, I'm teaching ELA, and so I still work with the ELA team to see what they're doing, and then I just bring it down to an easier level, for my kids. But we still try to do we try to learn the same points, but just maybe not in as much detail.
Different strategies.
Yeah.
What is the most challenging thing about collaborating with parents?
I have actually had a pretty good time with parents, but I do know that there are parents that don't want to, they're not going to answer your emails, they're not going to answer your calls, they're not going to discipline their child if you reach out to them. And that is really the most difficult, is if the parent doesn't want to cooperate and,
help.
Yeah.
On the other end. What is the best thing about teaching children with special needs?
You know that you're really doing something for them, because it's a smaller group typically, and so you can give them more attention and you get to know them better than if you had a great big class. And so they really end up a piece of your heart, and it goes both ways.
That's all I have for you.
Oh, yay!
Thank you.
It is pajama day, Spirit Week, by the way. Just saying.